It's okay. Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, I walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday best. Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, I walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday best.
Hello everyone, how are we all feeling today? It's another day in lockdown, another day of social distancing, another day of really trying to work out how we are going to get through the next weeks and months of unknown, because that's truly what it is. It's completely unknown. We don't know if we're coming, we don't know if we're going. We know where we are right now. That's an interesting place to be in, isn't it? Like, it's probably the first time for many of us that all we truly know, and this is what a lot of enlightened people try to tell you, is that all you know is right now. That's all you really know. You know about the now. You don't know about the minute, the hour, the day in the future. That is certain is the now. And that couldn't be any more true now than any other time for us, because generally speaking, we kind of know what tomorrow looks like, don't we? Like, we know tomorrow we're getting up and we're going to work. We're going to wake up, we'll have breakfast. Some of us don't have breakfast, but we know the routine. Whatever our routine is in the mornings, we know what it is. Whatever our daily lives look like in terms of our jobs and picking kids up from school and taking them to school, interactions with work colleagues, we have a general vibe of what our day and our evenings look like. So we can take advantage, or not necessarily take advantage, but we don't necessarily think about how I'm feeling right now in this moment, because we're always thinking about, or not thinking about it, but automatically in a sense of autopilot mode, that we're just constantly thinking about what we need to do next. Not deeply thinking about it, not consciously thinking about what we need to do next on a subconscious level, because we're so on autopilot of what the next thing is. We're not consciously on a manual level thinking about, what do I need to do now? How do I feel now? Am I happy where I am now on different levels? And that's a privilege that we could probably take from this right now, that we can think and put ourselves in a now state, and we don't actually have any other worries in terms of daily output, in terms of, as I'm talking about, going to work and all those things. We don't have those things to think about. So when you're not thinking about those things on a subconscious level, they're kind of moved to the side now. That opens up a space for us to consciously think about other things instead. And what I've been thinking about recently is this whole self-isolation aspect, that we are all self-isolating right now. And if you think about it, that sounds very lonely, doesn't it? Like, I'm isolating myself from everything. But the reality is that other than going to work, other than having the ability to socialize at pubs and clubs, which I don't do anyway, but I'm speaking on a general aspect, other than having the ability to go out and pubs and clubs and go to the cinema and do all these other things, generally speaking, the isolation period, there's not a real isolating element to it, if you know what I mean. Let me explain this better. If we was to go back maybe 50 to 100 years and was in the same situation where we had to self-isolate, could you imagine how different the experience would be then compared to now? Like, then in my mind, when I put myself there, I truly see darkness, just darkness, and this cloud of nothingness, because You're truly isolated from the world. You don't have a smartphone. You don't have a TV unit that's informing you, giving you information about what's going on in the world. You don't have it. All you have is what you know right now in this moment in your own home, completely disconnected from the world. And the only access you have to finding out information about the world is to literally leave your house, which you're not supposed to be doing. So what are you? You're kind of waiting for something. You're kind of waiting for some type of knock at the door to say to you, it's okay now, you can come out. But up until then, what do you have, from the beginning of self-isolation to the end point, that middle ground, it's far more dark, it's far more unknowing. Whereas we have the ability to literally turn on the news and know what the death toll is, or know how many cases are, or receive more information about different aspects of the virus and where it's traveling to next. Not say traveling like it's on a plane to a new holiday destination, but traveling as in it's moving around, it's spreading. We can track it through other people's diary perspective. Other people are uploading onto the internet what's going on in their towns, in their cities, in their countries. We can receive information on a personal level as well as on a news kind of institutional level. So that ability to receive that information is far less isolating than it would have been in a period of time where we didn't have this kind of technological advancement. So in that sense, that's very privileged. What we also have in terms of truly not being isolated is the ability to still communicate. I would feel like probably one of the most damaging aspects of true self-isolation is the ability to not communicate with anyone. That darkness that I envision, it's the darkness of not speaking, only speaking to the four walls around you and no human interaction, not seeing anything new, seeing the same walls, hearing the same voice in your head, and not exposing yourself to any variances, anything different, anything new, nothing is coming in. It's all the same, and that will dull your brain and numb your senses to a point in which you are just a zombie. That's what I see. It could be a little bit extreme, but that is what I see. What I'm seeing from our perspective and our term of self-isolating is I'm seeing creativity. I'm going on my news feeds and people are doing hilarious things. People are doing really good community-based things, in terms of social community, where they're creating all these different types of parties through FaceTiming and through apps and things like that. I'm seeing interaction. I'm seeing ways in which people can communicate with each other, whether it's through FaceTime or through phone call conversations, or even if it's through just observation. If you're not a type of person that wants to put yourself out there, but you enjoy observing is also a form of communication. You're looking through a lens, you're looking through this window of timelines where you're seeing what other people are doing. You can see what they're doing at home. You can see new streams of cat videos or whatever it may be. You are connected. You are not alone. You are not isolated. You are isolated physically, but what we all know is what's most important in your mind. And mentally, no one in the 21st century in Britain today who has access to a smartphone is isolated. We are free. We are truly free in the sense right now that we have the ability to not only have the ability to interact with each other, but we have the function of time as well. Time is actually, for the first time, on our side. We're so used to having being on this autopilot where on a daily basis time is against us. we are trying to fit as many small things as possible, or big things as possible, into a small window of time, because majority of our time is made up of getting ready, preparing, traveling to, and working. And then once you finish work, it's then the aspect of traveling back home, winding down, preparing yourself for the following day of work. So our days are confined in terms of the free time we have to do other things. Right now, we truly have the luxury of time. Now, the luxury may not expand on a physical level that we can go out and do so many different things, but on a mental level, there's a plethora of things that we are now able to expose ourselves to, whether it's learning new languages, whether it's learning instruments, whether it's challenging yourself, whether it's communicating, talking to people that you haven't spoken to in a long time. It could be anything. Like, we are able to expose ourselves to a lot more because time, for the first time, is on our side. And when I see posts of people bored, whilst I'm trying to reserve myself from sounding judgy, at the same time I'm like, wow, if you're bored already, and we don't know how long this is going to last, maybe you should ask yourself the question as to why you're bored. Is it because maybe, and it's no fault of your own, that you're used to being in this world where you are functioning on autopilot, and that autopilot functioning has been useful and suitable for the way your mindset is at that moment in time, and now you've been left, all those things have been put to the side, and now you've been left with time and you don't know what to do to fill it because you've not been here before. It's a new experience for all of us to have all this time. But what most importantly it gives you is the ability to think. And when I say think, it makes it sound very simple, but how much of us truly think on a conscious level, like deeply thinking about things? Not half thoughts where you kind of, thought about something and then you thought about something else, because let's face it, there's so much things going on in our day, so much information that's being thrown at us during the course of our day, whether it's funny memes, whether it's a news flash, whether it's world affairs, whatever it is, and then we've got our own layer of our own daily lives or things that's going on, whatever it is, we are pounded on a daily basis with a wave of information that, of course, is going to be very difficult to have full, uninterrupted, elaborated thought processes. It's not possible. But now we have time on our hands. Are we making use of it? Are we taking advantage of it? If, for example, we had the Brexit debate take place now, could you imagine how much analysis would have to take place? Could you imagine how much more time we would have to challenge our leaders? Like, if you think about how a lot of the debates took place during the time of the Brexit campaign, all the debate, and let's not even say Brexit, any political campaign, any political debate that takes place on our TV screens, it's on a condensed period of time, a period of time in which no true policy can truly be explained. It's impossible. It would take the full allotted time of the whole show segment, probably more, in order to explain it to you. Now, that's because these corporate news companies are very much aware of people's general time span in terms of watching things, as well as trying to make sure that they're getting the numbers up of people watching. It's all about making money. Now, imagine it took place now where they knew everyone's home. No one's going anywhere. They're not trying to grab people's attention to stay here and not leave and not do this and not do other fun, interactive things outside. They know people are home. Could you imagine perhaps how differently those types of debates could have been played out? Could you imagine how differently those conversations could have gone and how much more information we could have received and that the conversations that were taking place will be far less divisive, you would hope. I mean, there's a multitude of reasons as to why conversations can be divisive. But in terms of constantly feeling this pressure of time to get your point across, and it's that pressure of feeling that time is against you, you need to get your point across quickly, that it would perhaps make you make mistakes in the sense that you're not explaining yourself fully, so that you're in a situation that you can't just respond with a statement that has no real meaning, no real integrity, no real information, just a blanket statement that you know will stick in the minds of people. You know, that's what pretty much happened throughout the whole campaign. We saw Farage do it, and then everyone else kind of just jumped on board and started doing it as well. But could you imagine if that wasn't good enough? Could you imagine if the general public said, yeah, I know Brexit means Brexit, but I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Like, could you imagine if our political leaders would say slogans, and then we literally, as a general public, no matter what side of the political spectrum you stood on, went, what? Wait a minute, did you say Brexit means Brexit? I just asked you a very important question. I asked you about how leaving the European Union will impact my business, and you replied, Brexit means Brexit. Could you imagine if everyone stood behind that man and said, yeah, you did just say Brexit means Brexit? That didn't answer his question. Can you answer his question? We are not an electorate. We are not a society that is going to be willing to accept these types of narratives and accept these types of answers. Could you imagine really holding our leaders accountable for what they say, because we had the time to really hear what they had to say? We had the time to really see the rubbish and the slogans that they're pushing out, see through it and go, yeah, that's not good enough, no matter what side of the political spectrum we were sitting on. Could you imagine how different politics would be? Could you imagine potentially how different the outcome could have been? We'll never know. But what is interesting now is that we're at a time where we have time to think, we have time to truly understand, if we choose to, because we have time on our hands to do so. We have time to truly understand things we haven't understood before. Now, to give a good case point example of this, is that if we look at how, let me start from here. Okay, like I'm just giving out thoughts here. I'm not saying I've got the answers to everything. I'm just reading off things in my head. So we have the technological advancement. Science and technology has brought these incredible smartphones into our lives, where we are constantly tapped in. We now have to make a conscious effort to tap out. You have to switch off our phone sets to tap out. We can't just be tapped out. Like you could, 100 or so years ago, you could just close the door and be by yourself. Going back to my point, we think less, I feel. We think less as technology gets better. The more technology advances, the less thinking we do. And a good kind of perhaps analogy of this would be this. Let's go back and think about Aristotle. Let's think about Archimedes. Let's think about Plato. Let's think about other really, really, really good people in the past that have come up with so many different theories and how we should be as a society and how we should think and how we should feel. That process came about, for example, by someone saying, let's just say, for example, I said to you, I wonder what would happen if we plucked a human being from the 21st century now and then just pushed them and just dropped them into the dinosaur period. I wonder what would happen. Now that's an interesting conversation, right? Like, what would happen? What would happen? How would they procreate? Could they survive alongside the dinosaurs? Could the what would be the greatest commodity to a human being in that period of time to survive? What would it be to survive? Would it be to live alongside? Would it be to prosper? Could you create communities? Could you have civilization? What would it look like? What could be all the possible variables? That conversation that's taking place, that is philosophy. Yeah, because you're in a place where you are coming up with different variables in a hypothetical situation as to how you think we would interact as human beings, what we could do as human beings. With the advancement of technological science, you can just run that example through a simulation, right? So I could propose that idea, put it in a simulation, and put different variables through the simulation, and we could probably come up with a very sound outcome, a very sound scientific outcome as to how we would have lived alongside them by running it through a simulation. Now, what that's done is it's removed the philosophical aspect out of the conversation. What it's done, still, we can learn a lot from and maybe have a different philosophical conversation with the answers. But from the starting point of the question being posed to the end point of coming out with a potential outcome, that middle section, that is, in my opinion, and I open you to challenge me on it. I'm hoping to hear different ideas, but my opinion is that is, almost the root of philosophy. It's the unknown. It's the theorizing. It's the way that a conversation could spin off in so many different directions, and so many different variables that enlightens the human brain to other possibilities, and thinking, okay, well, now we've come up with this idea and this aspect of if a human being were to try and coexist along with the dinosaurs, what if we then took this model that we've just thought about right now and thought, why can't we as a civilization replicate a similar model here based on some of the things that we've extracted from that conversation? And it's that enables you to think big about how we could live greater and together, more harmonious as a society. That is that conversation, is those aspects. It's not actually the end result of how we coexist with the dinosaur. It's about what spins out from that conversation, and just running it through a simulation and coming out with the outcome, which is what technological advancement has done. It takes us to a place where if we have a question and we want the answer, we don't go through all the processes in between, the thinking stages. You go straight to Google. Just whack it on Google, bop, 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 and you got your answer, and you move forward. And like I said, there's still advantages of getting that answer so quickly so that you could perhaps, do different things with that answer. But you're missing out on a huge section here. You're missing out on a lot. And there's a lot to say that we haven't evolved that great a deal as human beings in terms of how we interact with each other. We make the same mistakes. We have the same wars. We have the same social classes. We have the same social constructs. We have the same pyramid, in the sense that we have the top 1% that own 90% of the world's economy and wealth, and the rest of us are just scrapping between ourselves, blaming each other for this, that, and the other. When the reality is that if we all, came together and looked up and went, I can see the chain of events and effects as to how what they have done has affected me right here, But we, generally speaking, don't have time to do that. We only have time to see the person right in front of us and blame them. They're the problem. It's you. You are the problem right in front of me, and not seeing the ripple effect of what he did all the way over there. We don't have time to do it. And what I'd hope for during this lockdown phase and the social distancing and isolating, and I put the social isolation in inverted commas because obviously I don't truly feel isolated at this period of time. What I hope that comes from it is that we as a society, reevaluate what's important to us as individuals, and also what we prioritize as importance to us as a community as a whole. And I don't just mean as a community in your local area, but as a community, as in a global community. What are our goals? What are our main targets that we want to really push government agenda and policies to be looking at, and to be steering our planet, and to be steering our direction in terms of how we are as a society in a direction that is genuinely beneficial for all. And rather than having divisive conversations and seeing the divide, seeing the left, seeing the right, seeing that there's actual middle ground here, and where we are both being pitted against each other. We may have different ideologies, but we're definitely being pitted against each other, and there must be some middle ground that will allow us to live harmoniously to a point that we can actually see what the greater issue is. Because ultimately, whether you're extreme left or extreme right, whatever it is, and I don't want to make this too political, but ultimately, the main thing that you care about is feeding your friends and your family and your loved ones around you. That is your main goal, to live and to survive and to have a degree of prosperity, whatever that may mean, depending on your social and your class group. So hopefully it means that we are more tapped into ourselves, we're more tapped into our surroundings, that simple slogan or generic rhetoric doesn't work anymore. It's not enough. That we are so open and in tune that when we go back out, once the doors come off the locks and we're going back out into society, we are reborn. We are no, let's not say reborn. We're not reborn. We are modified. We are modified. We have changed some settings, some default settings that have accumulated in us over the years for us to be able to work on such a destructive autopilot mode, that we have changed those default settings that are actually allows our autopilot mode to be far more good far more working towards the greater good of us individually, our family, and us as a civilization. The chances are that once we come out of lockdown, we're all just gonna, like an elastic band, just kind of snap back into where we was before the lockdown, because life will just get in the way again. How much time do we have to persevere and not allow ourselves to get back into those old habits? How much do we really want it? The beauty of the way the system is set up is that it's so easy to live in it. I'm not saying that there aren't people that fall out of that system that it doesn't benefit whatsoever, but the majority of us, it's easier not to think. It's easier to just go along with it, and that process of making it so easy and making it seem like the person to blame is so obvious, and it's not obscure, and it's not grey, and it's not someone behind someone. That ability to make everything just seem so obvious and clear and distinctively in front of you, it makes life seem a lot more manageable. But perhaps, much like in The Wizard of Oz, perhaps once you peel back the curtain and you see what's behind there, it's like, I just wish it was what I thought it was. Like when Neo takes the pill, it's like he says, I wish I took the blue pill. Maybe it is a little bit of that. But I genuinely think we're going to snap back. Everything will just go back to how it was. And it'll be interesting to see how much of this period of time that we're going through right now, how much it plays a part in how we are as a society moving forward, or if this is just some kind of distant memory that basically gets explained in one simple meme. And this whole process, this whole phase in 2025, 2026, 2030 is just going to be a meme. Do you remember when? This is just going to be a meme of coronaviruses. And it's not going to be anything that actually played a substantial part in how we are as a human race going forward. But you never know. I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that we come out of this much more together. I hope I'm going to see so many more posts of people doing incredible things. Seeing how many people overnight just volunteered to go on help the NHS, like stuff like that. That just makes you think, wow, amongst all the crap, there are still incredible people, incredible selfless people, because they're putting themselves on the front line to expose themselves to the virus in many different ways, to be able to, without a thought, because the response rate was literally on the same evening, so that these people didn't think twice, just boom, they were on it. And people like that, they're the ones that give me hope. Say, do you know what? Maybe, just maybe, if this does go on long enough, it gives enough people enough time to truly tap out of the autopilot and tap in to the manual mode of yourself, and start to love yourself, start to love yourself, but also be aware of the aspects of yourself that are not loving. And hopefully that will provide a good starting base for once we come out of lockdown and reintegrate with the rest of society to create a better dialogue for all of us going forward.